Hi, Skatz here. Come with me through the curtain of blurred colons and find out what's going on in my ongoing cancer story. Is there something going on? Who knows? Welcome to the Tumortastic Video Diary number 50. It's Friday, December the 13th. Lucky for some. Welcome to Still Alive, where we don't like to die before we die, do we? Oh no. Can you believe it? Number 50. Well, so I am indeed still alive and still recovering from the operation. This 50th diary entry was going to be a huge one, and I was going to introduce you to Bert the Bag, but I have to admit, I'm still not up to spending a whole day writing and making a video, and Bert is being very reluctant to make an appearance, which I think is unusual because to me he's been most of my universe for the last couple of weeks. I tell you what, I'll just rattle off at breakneck speed the story of being in hospital, shall I? I'll see if I can fit it into 5 minutes because I'll be glad to see the back of it, to be honest. Now, I forget what I last told you, but let's start with I went into hospital on November 26th to settle in. The operation was on the 27th. We took way too much stuff to the hospital room. Liz had to take about 4 trips to the car and back. It was like we were moving house. The nurses found it hilarious. They'd put me in a single room, which was bliss. There was only a chair, though, for Liz to stay in overnight. She nearly broke her back trying to sleep on it. The night after the operation, she'd put a couple of yoga mats down on the floor and curled up there, which was much better. But neither of us got much sleep. As you can imagine, I was a bit uncomfortable with tubes sticking out of me and into me. Oh, and I'd met the robot that did the operation, by the way. It's called Da Vinci. It looks a bit like a high-tech octopus. See, I can still use my teeth. Loads of arms it had. Yes, it looked great. Now, I had a bit of a problem with painkillers at the hospital. They were only giving me paracetamol, which I thought, that's nowhere near good enough. I was still in pain. I'd said that I wasn't good with the ibuprofen type drugs, but eventually they gave me something else instead. Can't remember the name, but it was the one that Northern Europeans can react badly to, so they shouldn't be giving it to anybody like me. Because I reacted really badly. I was wheezing and throwing up almost immediately, and they had to pump me up with steroids to stop it. I was coughing a lot too, which is awful when moving your diaphragm is the last thing you should be doing after an operation on your stomach. The pain was bloody awful. Anyway, after that second night in the single room, they ambulanced me in a very bumpy and painful way to the other hospital where they have wards especially for stomach patients, and that's where the stoma nurse lives. Yes, I had a shared room there, not with the nurse, with another patient. And I've talked about this on the Still Alive Facebook group, but here's what it was like anyway. The TV was on a lot of the time, and it was the other guy that had the remote control, which meant that I had to watch about 2 hours of bullfighting one day. Excuse me. I didn't have the strength to object or the vocabulary to have a discussion about whether it was a good thing or not. I was relieved when they changed the channel and put on the Spanish version of Wheel of Fortune. It was all helping my Spanish, actually, watching this Spanish TV, so maybe I shouldn't object to it at all, really, and having to cope with talking to the nurses, some of whom didn't speak English at all. I think my Spanish has improved a little bit. That's the first time I've been thrown into a situation where, I'm in at the deep end. So there you go. My bed was at the back of the room by the window, which had no blinds, so at night the street lights were stabbing my eyelids and I could see them even with my eyes closed. There were 2 thin wardrobes in the room, both of them at the end of my bed, so I had frequent invasions from my roommate's wife to get stuff in and out. There was a curtain in between the beds, but it only went 3/4 of the way across the room, which gave no privacy at all. It was noisy with the door open, and the nurses and auxiliary staff seemed to love leaving it that way. Visitors, oh yes, visitors. Consternation. They're supposed to be only between certain hours and only 1 at a time, but my roomie had 3 or 4 at a time for most of the day. When I tried to get Chris in on his own when Liz had gone home with a bad cold one day, it was during visiting hours as well, but he had so much trouble with the Gestapo on the door downstairs. He got in eventually. Liz had to send him a copy of her pass on his phone so he could go, there you go. So yes, he got in and up anyway. He's good at doing stuff like that, sorting out problems. Anyway, Liz was feeling more awful every day. Such a bad cold she had. She could only come in with, she had a great big black mask on, and she could only stay for an hour or so. She didn't want to spread her cold around the ward, unlike some of the other visitors who seemed to be in competition with one of the patients that must have held the world record for sounding like a dying walrus, especially during the night. I had terrible trouble with the stoma bags. They kept leaking, and so many nurses tried time after time to change them and reapply different glues and pastes to solve the problem. I was left waiting for hours, sometimes lying in my own shit, half naked, with the roomies' visitors peering in. And this happened day and night for several days, and the only way to communicate with the nurses was by pressing the emergency button and then yelling across the room to the intercom. My roomie was probably more sick of me than I was of him and his visitors. Actually, you know, they weren't too bad. Could have been a lot worse. His wife did help by talking into the intercom for me to get a nurse to come, but she wasn't there overnight for the same reason as Liz, the uncomfy chairs. So I had to put on the bright light and make the call myself, really loud. Now, let's talk about the food, shall we? Yeah, no, I don't really want to remember it, to be honest. They kept bringing me a broth called caldo that tasted like dishwater, and I couldn't force it down, so I wasn't getting good nutrition at all. Even when they started bringing some solids, they still brought the broth with it. I just left it untouched. They also brought me white bread, which is kind of one of my nemesis? I don't know. And because my blood glucose was reacting to that, like it always does, and spiking really high, when they took my bloods, which they did after I'd had the bread, they ended up going, you need insulin. So they're injecting that all over me. It goes against everything that I know about controlling my blood sugar, which I've done most of the time since I was told I had diabetes 6-7 years ago, I think. And some of you who know my story will know that I lost 35 kilos, I think it was, by controlling my blood sugar and sorting out my diet. Anyway, they even used at the hospital my high blood sugar as an excuse for keeping me there for an extra day after they'd promised me I was leaving that day. I said, look, if you let me go home, I'll eat proper food and my blood will be fine. The other excuse they gave was that the contents of my stoma bag were too liquid, so they put me on diarrhea medication to sort that out and said they needed to monitor me. But I could easily have done that at home. So when the second day of promising that I could go home came round and they did a U-turn on it again, Liz and I went ballistic and insisted on signing me out so I could go home. Now, I'd already had several days of gradually removing the tubes from various places. There was the catheter first, which was literally a relief, because if the tube got tangled with anything, it wasn't the best feeling having my todger tugged violently. After that came out, I had what looked remarkably like a bruised black pudding between my legs. I was having to pee into a plastic vase for the duration so they could measure my output. I had another one for the contents of my stoma bag too, an open vase. At least until my roomie's wife came in and sprayed horrible air freshener and perfume all over the place, which I'm allergic to, so it made me cough violently and run out of the room. Well, kind of grab all my attachments and hobble out of the room. The staff changed me from a vase to a container with a lid after that, which stopped some of the smell at least. The bathroom was tiny, so imagine the intricate task of getting me and my drip stand, you know, those really tall things that they hang the bags on, and they've got legs that stick out with wheels on them. So yeah, a bit difficult getting that through the door. And I was also carrying my blood drain bag, which was only on a short tube, so if I dropped it, it dangled in midair. But before dangling in midair, after I dropped it, it tugged at the wound. So let's just say the gradual removal of all of these tubes felt like freedom, and I could walk around at last without all of those accoutrements and attachments and and also I could sleep without turning over and getting twisted in them as well. I started doing several laps of the ward corridor every day, and I even went in the lift downstairs and went outside into the sunshine with Liz as time went on. I was sorely tempted to carry on straight to the car so Liz could drive me home, but no, I didn't dare do that. Well, eventually then, after going apeshit, like I said, and insisting on being released from this prison, Liz drove me home and I settled down into a routine of lying on the settee and watching telly, really. That's all I've been fit for since then. But there was almost immediately a problem to sort out. I'd only been given 2 spare bags and the bases they clipped onto, which to my mind was nowhere near enough, considering how many leakages and bags I'd gone through in the past week. And we were only a day away from a long holiday weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday and Monday, with most shops closed, including most of the pharmacies, and health centres have minimal staff on those days too. I'd checked my medical app, which lists the medications and prescriptions that are registered on my medical card. That's a really good thing they do in Spain, actually. They just do it digitally through their computer onto your medical card. But when I looked on there on the app, no, there was no prescription for any extra bags on the day that I got out of hospital. So Liz went out the same day to try and sort it all out. She tried all of the local pharmacies, our local health centre, but there was a problem with the codes of the bags as well. I still can't quite understand what was going on, but from the stoma nurse not putting the prescriptions on my card to begin with, and then when they did appear a few hours later, it was impossible to get the bags. It meant Liz spending nearly 24 hours being sent from pillar to post with a heavy cold and a feeling of desperation. She'd gone half an hour or more out of Compita down to the coast to try and sort it there. At the pharmacy, the health centre, the hospital, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. In the meantime, she lost one of the bases to the bag, so we were down to 1, but nobody could sort it out. Eventually, she just said, I'm going to Malaga, and she drove all the way there, and she flashed her visitor's pass to get up to the ward I'd been on, and burst into tears in front of the nurses, who fortunately took pity and supplied a whole bag full of bags and the various attachments and sticky things to secure them. They could have done that on my way out of the hospital. Hey, I forgot to say, I'd been injecting myself as well. There's a first for me. It's a blood thinner. And I've only got today and tomorrow to go with that. They're almost finished. It goes into my belly, so I don't have to mess about finding a vein or anything, because that would have been scary. And I don't think they let patients do that anyway. That's a nurse's trained thing. So, since getting home, I've been getting used to being an invalid and getting better at changing the bags myself. It's not the simplest thing to do at the moment. I'll get used to it. Liz managed to get some special spray that unsticks the glue on the bases, so that makes it much less painful to take them off. I'd shaved off all of my belly hair before the operation, but it's now grown back, and the hairs seem to be so much thicker than before, so that doesn't help with preventing leaks and removing the plasters holding the base on. Heat seems to be the secret. That gets everything gripping me properly after they've been applied, and it seals the gaps up. At home I use a hairdryer. There's a handy tip and hint for any stoma bag users watching. There you go. My nemesis at the moment is elastic. You see, because I've got an elastic belt that holds the base of the bag on, holds it tight. Then there's my undies and my trousers, all with elasticated waistbands. The problem with that is I have all these little wounds with staples in them dotted around my belly area, plus a much longer wound with staples in over the operation zone. And all of the clothing and tight elastic catches on the staples and the rough skin, and sometimes on the gluey edges at the base of the bag. And when I sit up or bend over or just try to get comfortable, something pulls or rubs. It's most delightful. Not. Oh, I don't know if you can hear, but it's just started raining. Oh, so I'm going to get wet going back into the house. That's not good. Oh dear. I'll have to wear Walter's hat so that my glasses don't get all rainy. Anyway, fortunately, I was at the local health centre today having the staples removed. Hooray! There were some under the base itself, which is one of the reasons for the leaking, I think. So the nurse had to change my bag and base today, only she didn't have the glue remover. So that was a bit stressful. A very, very gradual ripping experience. Eek! I knew I should have taken all my stuff down with me. So that's the story so far. Sorry for the sniff there, but I'm a bit blocked up with the same cold, and I've got a rough throat as well. I'm doing very little except watching Christmas movies, which is nice, and trying to get comfortable, which is nice when I do get comfortable. I'm sleeping quite well, which is good. I'm up 3 or 4 times in the night to check and empty my bag and have a pee because I'm drinking more water than usual. I'm taking paracetamol still, and I'm still getting worn out very, very quickly. Probably more quickly than I was before the operation. So there you go. La! On that note, that's all for this week. I thought it was going to be a really short one, but actually it's gone on for, I don't know, that's at least 15 minutes. Well, there you go. Next Friday, it's my birthday, and I've got a 0 on the end of it. And I have to say, it's the first time I've actually ever felt my age. I'm not going to be celebrating very much, at least not right now. I'm going to save that for a later date when I can get around a bit more. And then I promise I will be celebrating. I've done a lot of complaining on this video diary, I know. But, you know, it gets you through a bit of complaining. I hope you don't mind. I'm smiling through it all, though, you know, and Liz is looking after me well. I think I probably will do a diary for next week. I'm going to take my time over it, and then I'll take a break until the new year. I'm doing the final YouTooSpain live show of the year tomorrow morning, so why not join me on the live chat, and we'll say hello and happy Christmas to each other. That'll be very lovely. Keep your fingers and toes crossed, you lovely people. And until next time, raise your drinking receptacle with me. The toast is still alive, and let's do the still alive dance.